if you are somebody who likes to reset the ball more and you like your soft game more, then if it is above the height of your hips in the transition zone, feel free to reset the ball in. I'm not saying that this is like a one-size-fits-all prescription that when you're in the transition zone and the ball is above the height of your hips, you should be driving every single ball. What I'm saying is you do have a license to do it. Clearly, as has been shown by the top of the game, there is a path to winning that way. But I'm not saying that that's what you should all be doing. If you like to reset the ball, still do it, because again, the reason we're driving these balls in transition is ultimately still to get to the kitchen.
This is the moment we waited for. Everything you want is right here. We gon' give them what they came for. We gon' take it up from last year. Watch the game change. Watch the game change. Watch the game change. Watch the game change, yeah.
All right, welcome to another episode of my podcast. We're just going to get straight into it. We're here at Salt Lake City now. I actually just checked it out. Super cool convention center. It's this seems to be one of the coolest venues that I've been to. We're playing on pickle roll courts, I think, or something like that. But anytime I'm in Utah, I'm super happy. Utah is, I think, probably my second favorite place to go. Outside of maybe Cali. I mean, Utah's awesome because there's so pickleball heavy. There's so many people that love pickleball here, and you can just kind of feel the passion for it, which is so awesome to me. So, yeah, love going to Utah. So, anyway, we're going to get right into it. So, there was a question that was asked to me of how do you know when to reset the ball when you're in transition and at the kitchen line versus actually swinging and hitting the ball hard and going for it? And that is something that brings itself, well, I would just say this. It's something that's super important at any level, actually. But I think at the 4-0 level, 3-5 level, I think it's even more important because that's where you'll see the most players just kind of swinging wildly, going for big, trying to hit the ball hard, basically, when it's at their shoelaces and they're 6 feet behind the kitchen line in transition, trying to work their way in. Not a recipe for success. So I think the first answer to this question is it depends on who you are as a player, how aggressive you like to be, how much you like your hands, how much power you have. So if you're somebody that has a lot of power, that really likes, let's say you use a super powerful paddle, you like to be aggressive, then that changes. I think you can actually swing and take some big cuts and be aggressive in transition, even if it's below the height of your waist sometimes. And I think that there's really, there's definitely some risk associated with it, but there's a risk-reward trade-off with every shot in pickleball. And I think that that's an okay shot to be pursuing sometimes. So for me, for example, I'm one of those players that likes to hit the ball hard. I have a lot of power. And for example, if somebody goes to me in transition, let's say and what I mean by transition is, let's say I'm halfway in between the baseline and the kitchen line. So I'm kind of working my way up. My opponents are up at the kitchen line trying to keep me back. If I'm in that type of situation and they go to the height of my knees or below, I'm always going to reset. So if the ball is at the height of my knees or below, I'm always just trying to reset that ball. It almost really just doesn't depend on who I'm playing against or how I'm feeling, because I think percentage-wise, it almost never makes sense to try to hit the ball from below the height of your knees, okay, when you're in transition. You should just be resetting that ball, because even if you do hit a pretty hard shot from the transition zone below the height of your knees, if you can hit a hard ball from there to that player at the kitchen line, they're already established right up at the kitchen line. It's going to be very easy for them to hit a very good volley back to you because they do have a lot of time to react because, again, you are in the transition zone. You're all the way back there. The other thing, if from that angle at the height of your knees or below, if you hit it very hard, it's probably going out anyway because you're going to have to impart an upward trajectory on the ball. And as I always say, the most important part of pickleball when you're in those fast exchanges is that seesaw battle. So whoever's able to get the ball down wins. It's not about power as much, and that should mean a lot coming from me. I hit the ball as hard as I can on almost every shot, and I love, I do have a lot of power. I will tell you, It's not as much about power as much as it is about winning the seesaw battle, getting the ball down. Whoever gets the ball down first wins most of the time. And if you're swinging in the transition zone from the height of your knees or below, you can be sure that for the most part, you're not going to be the first person to get that ball down. So if it's in between the height of my knees and my hips, this is more of the gray area zone, right? If it's in between, or maybe it's, let's say at my thigh or even at my hip, because I like to hit the ball hard and I like to be aggressive, if I'm playing against somebody who I feel like I might have an advantage against in terms of power or hand speed, I will swing away and take some pretty big cuts and try to hit that ball hard. So this is sort of a misconception. You're taught in pickleball that if it's below the height of your waist and you're in the transition zone, you should always be resetting that ball. I do not think you should always be resetting that ball. I think this is kind of what they say is new pickleball, whatever you want to call it, modern pickleball. You noticed this past weekend, Kwang Duong, who is playing extremely well. Kwang Duong now, I think, has beat Ben Johns 4 times. He just beat Ben Johns in men's doubles again, right? Kind of a big deal. He is taking a lot of swings in transition. He is not resetting in transition as much as he is just swinging. And you can watch the tape. If the ball is in between the height of his knees and his hips, he is just swinging away pretty often. And sometimes he'll hit a third shot and then a fifth shot drive. So I think it's definitely time to get rid of the concept that you only drive the third shot and you should never drive the fifth shot, right? It's funny. I mean, a year ago, players were saying, and coaches would say, hey, you maybe you can drive the third, but you should never drive the fifth, right? You shouldn't hit 2 drives in a row. It's like, well, why not? With how powerful the paddles are, with how good the technology is now, there is no reason to not hit a fifth shot drive, unless, of course, you have a short fifth and then you drop it in. Because if the ball is short, you still want to be dropping that ball into the kitchen and just getting up to the kitchen line. But if you're back there and you're in transition and the ball is around the height of your hips, there's nothing wrong with going for it and trying to hit the ball hard if you can keep the ball reasonably low. So that brings me to the next point. When you're in transition and you're trying to rip the ball and hit the ball hard, which is something that obviously is demonstrated by Kwang Duong, something that we can do, you should pretty much, I would say, be prioritizing the height of the ball over power, right? Because if you do go for a lot of power and there is too much height, then you're going to be missing that one long anyway. So what I mean by prioritizing the height of the ball is prioritizing that it is low. Because if you can hit it very hard from the transition zone to somebody when they're at the kitchen line and still meet them low kind of by their stomach, then you do have a very good opportunity to get an easy volley out of them, maybe even a missed volley out of them, and then drop your 7th, right? So, just to kind of summarize that, if you're somebody that likes to hit the ball hard, if you came from a tennis background, maybe you have a lot of power, I am here to tell you that there is nothing wrong with swinging in the transition zone, hitting a third shot drive. They'll hit a ball back. Of course, you want to hit the third shot drive if you really like to drive the ball. They hit another ball back to you. You don't have to drop the fifth shot. Unless it's below the height of your knees, which is what we already discussed. But if it's above your knee height, if it's at your hip height, and you can keep that fifth drive low, drive it again. If you're playing against somebody that has bad volleys, maybe somebody that's got a little less power than you, there's nothing wrong with hitting a drive and then a drive and then a drive. I don't see why you wouldn't, as long as you're still consistent with your drives. And if you like your drives, keep peppering away. That's what the game is telling us. You watch the top of the game, you'll see you can hit a couple drives. And then when you earn that easy volley, then you drop. Because, of course, I'm not saying that you should not be dropping at all, because the game is still to be won at the kitchen line. You still need to get up to the kitchen line. So these drives, these thirds, these fifths, these 7-shot drives, I'm saying are still being used to eventually earn your way up to the kitchen line and get into a kitchen line rally, because you're still not going to win the point from transition. You're not going to be somebody that's in transition you might, but at the highest levels, that's not going to hold up. Really, with the purpose of all this driving is that you see Kwang's doing it, a lot of other players are doing it, is that it's maybe easier to drive the ball in transition sometimes than it is to drop the ball in transition sometimes, especially with how good the paddles are now. Okay, so then, lastly, if it's above the height of my hips and I'm in transition, if I can make the contact with the ball up here in this area, but I'm back, maybe 6 feet behind the kitchen line, there's a couple things there. If there's pace on that ball coming at me, if the ball's being hit hard to me, and I'm in the transition zone, I'm maybe 4 or 5 feet inside of the baseline, my opponents are up at the kitchen. Well, if it's coming up to my chest area or anywhere above my hips, that ball's probably going out. Okay? There's a little bit of a less likelihood that it's going out the closer you get to the kitchen line and it's at that height of your chest or anywhere above your hips. So let's pretend like you're 5 feet inside the baseline. You're firmly in the transition zone, and then somebody hits a ball to you that's slightly above the height of your hips. You think it's probably going in, which means that there's not a lot of power on it. I don't see why you wouldn't. If you like your drive, if you have a lot of power, just drive the ball to the middle, because you can actually impart a downward trajectory on that ball. And if you can make your opponent make contact with the volley at the height of their hips or below, well, you're going to earn some errors at almost every level, and you're going to get a pretty easy volley. If they do make that volley back, if you can execute a good drive, it's going to be pretty easy for you to drop that next one in. So I would say it's actually probably easier to drive that ball from around this height of your body in the transition zone than it is to reset. But that's also my personal opinion. If you're somebody who likes to reset the ball more, and this is a very key point here. All right, so now I'm here to talk to you guys about Selkirk backpacks. I probably shouldn't have to talk to you about them. I mean, you see them, it's enough of an ad to see them at all these tournaments. I mean, it seems like everybody's got one, and I actually think they're the best. I'm always begging Rob to send me more. I've got like 4 or 5 backpacks. They last so long too. I think the biggest thing about Selkirk backpacks is that they're really durable, especially with me. I mean, I'm putting as many paddles as possible in the backpacks. I've got gallons of coffee in the backpacks, sweaty shirts. I've done everything possible that you shouldn't do to a backpack to a Selkirk backpack, and I've had it now for 2 years. So I'm a huge proponent of the Selkirk backpacks. I think the tour line ones especially are very good. They look cool, they look sleek. I personally like the black ones. I'm known to bring 2 of them on court every match. So yeah, these are just my personal opinions on the Selkirk backpacks. I also think the team line is good, and yeah, I think if you want one, get one, because they're gonna last you quite a while, and they also look pretty cool, and they don't necessarily just look like a pickleball backpack either. I mean, I can wear them pretty much and bring them wherever, and it doesn't really, it kind of just fits in with any other backpack that you would have. So if you are somebody who likes to reset the ball more and you like your soft game more, then if it is above the height of your hips in the transition zone, feel free to reset the ball in. I'm not saying that this is like a one-size-fits-all prescription that when you're in the transition zone and the ball is above the height of your hips, you should be driving every single ball. What I'm saying is you do have a license to do it. Clearly, as has been shown by the top of the game, there is a path to winning that way. But I'm not saying that that's what you should all be doing. If you like to reset the ball, still do it, because again, the reason we're driving these balls in transition is ultimately still to get to the kitchen. And it's been shown that it is a way to get to the kitchen in pretty much every level. Obviously, you see it in men's pro doubles now, which is crazy to say. So if you like to reset the ball in transition every time. Me personally, I like to drive the ball. I think I can get some gain in the rally with some power, some swinging in transition, so I will swing sometimes. But yeah, there is, again, nothing wrong with hitting resets, even if it's up here, if it's around the height of your stomach, and you feel like you do not have an advantage in a fast volley exchange, and you're a couple feet behind the kitchen line, you'll still see a lot of pros resetting that ball because it's entirely situational. So yeah, that is that. If you guys have any questions, make sure to leave those questions in the comments. We're also going to touch on when to reset and when to swing when you are at the kitchen line. Okay, so when you're at the kitchen line, I think that it's obviously tough when you're in a fast hands exchange, volley, and then somebody crushes at you and you just say, okay, I'm going to reset. It's kind of a tough switch to flip, a switch that I'm actually not so great at flipping. I have a tendency to just want to crush every ball, and luckily I can hit the ball hard, so I get away with it. So it's okay. But I think if you are right at the kitchen against somebody who will say that, you're even in level and even in power and hand speed with, I think if you do make contact with the ball below the height of your hips and below the height of your waist, I think you should reset that ball. I think that it's kind of funny because you think it would be reversed. But when you're in the transition zone and the ball's a little below the height of your waist, you might actually have a better chance of earning your way back to neutral just hitting swinging sometimes and hitting that ball hard. But when you're at the kitchen line and it's below the height of your waist, I think if you do have the ability to, you should be resetting those, because it's very tough to earn your way back to neutral, because if you're already at the kitchen line and the ball is at the height of just above your knees, if you hit that ball hard or with any bit of pace, you're going right up because you're very close to the net. And if you hit it hard, it's going out. It's almost impossible to keep that ball in with a good deal of pace. But if you're back there in the transition zone, you actually have more of a license to swing. And this is where people get so messed up. They think, oh, I'm back here in the transition zone. I got to reset everything. My opponent's got a huge advantage. They're up at the kitchen. Well, not necessarily. Because if you guys are both at the kitchen and the ball is up, down by your knees, and you try to hit it hard, well, your opponent's right there. Your opponent's 14 feet away from you. They crush the ball back at you and you lose the point. But if you're 6 feet behind the kitchen line, you're in transition, maybe you don't hit it perfect. You swing from down there, and then they make contact up here. Well, you might actually live to tell the tale because you have all of that space and that distance between you and your opponent. So this is super, super important. So I'm going to make it very clear. When you're in the transition zone, you actually do have license to swing more and hit some more balls that are in between the height of your knees and your hips. And when you're at the kitchen line, I'd highly recommend that if the ball is in between the height of your knees and your hips, to just reset it, because it's going to be very tough to earn your way back to neutral that way. Unless, of course, you have a big hand speed and power advantage against the person you're playing against. This is just, the only way I can teach this is under the assumption that the person that you are playing against is the same level as you, obviously. So if they're the same level, they've got the same power and hand speed, you are most likely to lose the point if you are volleying that ball and trying to hit it hard from below the height of your waist. Okay, that's all we got today. One thing I want to say again, thank you guys. If you're at the tournament and you are a subscriber of my YouTube channel and my newsletter, thank you for telling me. I was at this last tournament in Bristol. People were coming up to me and telling it to me, and I want to make it very clear. Sometimes my reactions are like, okay, thank you, and that's it, because I'm in a bit of a rush, but that does not mean I don't appreciate it. These tournaments, obviously, there's a ton of people. It's a crazy experience for me because there's so many people that are coming up to me and trying to talk to me and say hi to me, which I appreciate so much. They want pictures, but I'm also in a rush because I've got a lot of matches and I've got practice and this and that. So, sometimes I feel bad, but just remember, if you come up to me and I'm like, all right, let's do the picture fast, and then I go, that does not mean I didn't appreciate it. That just means I was in a big rush. I still love you. I love everyone that is subscribed to the newsletter and my YouTube channel. And I'm going to be nice to you if you come up to me. So anyway, that's all. I guess that's pretty much it. I wish I had a better outro for this. But one other thing that's actually interesting, we are still doing more virtual coaching stuff. Here's another thing, a little more economical, by the way, because my private lesson prices are expensive, and I get it. But this is something that I think is a better value deal, potentially. So you can actually reach out to me on my email at jamesignatowichpickleball@gmail.com, or reach out to me on Instagram at the James Ignatowich Coaching Instagram, not my personal Instagram. Reach out and ask for me to watch your whole group play doubles. So it's a little bit cheaper because all 4 of you guys are splitting the cost. We'll hop on a Zoom call together, me and your group of 4 players. We'll screen share it so that I can watch. We can all watch together. I'll pause and say, this is wrong, this is right, this is wrong, this is right. And we all watch it together for 1 hour. And then I give you guys all the feedback you need. And then I'll tell you what you're doing wrong, but I'll say it in a nice way. I promise. So, yeah, that's all. Thanks, guys.